Hey everybody, it's Gav here from GCRE TV. Today it is the syndication fund show with Maurucio role. Today we're going to be speaking about the new SEC regulations that have been coming out for the past months or past few months. We're going to be covering it so that everybody knows what it is they need to do so that they comply with the law and they don't get in trouble. Maurucio, hi, good morning. How are you?
Good, man. How you doing? Nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you as well. I see you have your suit on today, looking all snazzy.
It's one of those days.
Yes. So today, Maurucio, we're going to talk about the new SEC regulations that's been coming out for the last few months. I know you mentioned there was a few of them that's come out, so let's kind of touch base with some of the ones that is most important to everybody and relevant.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, usually nothing really happens from anything important or anything worthwhile, but for some reason, there's been literally a barrage of new SEC rules that actually affects what I do and my clients, who are raising capital to go buy real estate or whatever, but people who rely on these exemptions to registration, it's a lot of it that's affected. Probably the most significant one, well, actually, I don't know if it's the most significant one, but the first one that came out, which was about 2 months ago now, but still hasn't become effective. It actually becomes effective in a couple of weeks. December 8th is when it actually officially kicks in. And that has to do with the accredited investor definition, the expansion of the accredited investor definition, which is, it impacts everyone because if you're out there raising capital, some of the exemptions that we rely on limit us to only accredited investors. And so obviously the larger that pool becomes, the more access we have to capital, which is the whole idea.
Yes.
I'm going to always kind of remind everyone when we go through this, just in case somebody hasn't watched all the episodes, but when we're raising capital, we're selling securities, and we have to either register those securities or we have to find an exemption, right? Or it's illegal, as I like to say. Some exemptions allow you to take monies from non-accredited investors, and some exemptions allow you only to take monies from accredited. So it's very important. This issue of accreditation is critical to understanding what exemptions are available to us and who you can approach with some of these investments. Now, generally, up until now, for the past, 20 years or so, the definition at the individual side has always been based on income or net worth. It's always been a financial test. And the test has been essentially, if you have $1 million of net worth, excluding your primary residence, and I'm talking about US now, if you're $1 million in net worth, excluding your primary residence, or on the income side, if you have earned $200,000 the last 2 years with a reasonable expectation of earning $200,000 or more this year, then you're also an accredited investor. And the issue has become, the debate's always been going on, well, is that really the right mechanism, the right way of figuring out if somebody's accredited or not? Because we all know people who are super successful, super rich, but don't know the first thing about investing. They're the biggest, I always like to say, the biggest morons out there, and they just happen to have a lot of money, whether they inherited it or whether they got lucky, but they're certainly not very sophisticated. Yeah. And on the flip side, there's plenty of folks that are the smartest people in the room that just don't happen to have the financial wherewithal, and so they may not qualify as an accredited, but they're much smarter, much more sophisticated than others. So there's always been this debate, and finally, the SEC has come out and said, yes, we want to expand this, and we want to have some kind of a sort of a certification process where you're going to now be able to go take an exam through some approved college, or not college really, but some program that's been certified by the SEC, that they're going to be able to do some program, do an exam, you're going to pass the exam, and you're going to end up with a certification. So now I will be able to become an accredited investor irrespective of my income level and my net worth level if I choose to do that. Wow. So that's the interesting part. As it stands today, or let's just say December 8th, which is when it really kicks in, officially becomes the law, nothing's really changed yet because we don't have any of those certification programs yet. So the SEC has told us that they're going to start certifying institutions, companies, what have you, to be able to go provide this education and then have an exam and provide literally a certificate on graduation day. But we have no idea what that looks like. We don't know if that's going to be a weekend course that you can do online and then you just pass an exam. We don't know if it's going to be a semester long or a few months long, year-long program. Details we don't know yet. But the idea being is anywhere between starting December 8th, we may get word from the SEC that, hey, we've now certified different programs, and we're going to be able to find out how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, if it's a weekend, like I said, a weekend getaway, or more of a sort of a one thing. The only
so
one.
it sounds like the SEC doesn't have a clue how they're going to structure this as yet. It seems like they're selling something and they haven't even created it as yet.
Yeah, typically what happens is the details get filled in later. In our system, the first thing that happens is actually the law gets passed. So Congress passes a law. For example, when 506C came out, Congress kind of passes this broad statute that says, here's a new law, but there's a lot of details that need to be worked out. And that's what at the regulatory level, at the SEC level happens. And this is still within that framework. But yes, they don't have any I'm not saying they don't know what they're doing, but they certainly haven't shared that information with us yet. I don't know how close we are to getting that. We may get a list of programs by the end of the year. We may get them next year, 6 months from now. I have no clue when we'll get that information. And I'm sure it'll get trickled out, right? The list, and then that list will continue to get added and expanded. But I'm really curious to see whether this is just a one-day event that you take a test and you pass and you're good, or if it's a longer period. Now, the one thing I will say is that as of right now, they did pass a few people as of December 8th will be accredited because they already have licenses. So, for example, anybody that's a registered investment advisor, meaning you've already passed a test. So it's one of these three licenses: Series 7, Series 65, or Series 82, which are just different types of licenses you can get to then be able to go sell securities or advise people on the purchase and sale of securities. If you have one of those licenses, you're an investment advisor, then you're now going to be by definition an accredited investor, even if you don't meet those qualifications. So I can definitely see a young professional that's just starting out in the industry who just passed their exam. They may make $60,000 a year, so ordinarily they would not be qualified as an accredited investor. Now, because they have a Series 7 license or whatever, they are going to be accredited. So at least those people qualify. That's not a huge number, but it's going to be interesting to see here in the next few months or next few quarters what type of certification can come out. But that's has the potential to expand and will expand the accredited investor definition. But as of right now, it doesn't really change too much as of today or as of December 8th. There's nothing earth-shattering yet. But it's next year, for sure, it'll be a lot more interesting where people will be able to go get the certification. All right, I think we've beaten that one to death.
Yes.
The next one that came out, which is the one I'm actually the most excited about, except for we just had a new development that makes me wonder whether it's going to happen or not. But again, same thing with this particular, all of these regulations have an interesting process. So what typically happens with the SEC, our Securities and Exchange Commission, is they first come out with sort of a proposal or sort of an idea, literally an idea. Here's what we're thinking about doing. We want to do this. We want to expand this. We want to change the definition. We want to do something. And then they invite the public to make comments based on that idea. And then after those comments, they come out with a proposed rule, right? And then that proposed rule gets reviewed and people comment on something. And then at some point they come up with the final rule. And that's what happened with the accredited investor definition. They had a proposed rule, I believe it was last December. And we talked about it extensively on social media. These kind of new, everybody's kind of excited. And then fast forward to September of this year, then they actually came out with the final rules, almost identical to the proposed rules with a couple of tweaks based on the feedback that they got from the public. Well, we're in that. This what I'm about to talk about now is in the infancy stage. This is the first thing that came out of nowhere. And this was the ability, if it passes, the SEC wants to allow people to be able to refer investors to money raisers and get compensated for that referral, for that introduction. Okay. That's really a game changer for us because up until now, and I've talked about it extensively on social media, and I remind all of my clients that you cannot pay anyone a fee for referring an investor to you, right? So if somebody says, hey, I've got my friend John, he's looking for investments, I'm going to refer him to Gavin, and then that person invests in Gavin's deal, Gavin can't pay me $10,000, $50,000, can't give me a percentage of the deal. There's no thing, unless I'm a broker dealer, which in our world, nobody is. But you have to have a license to be able to do that, and when you don't, which 99.9% don't, you can't do that. You cannot get paid what's called transaction-based compensation, right? I have to be basically part of the deal in order to be able to even do this, but I can't just refer people over to you and get paid. there's a rule now proposed that's going to change that, because they recognize one of the challenges with this is that broker dealers, the people who can get paid, they really only cater to the really large corporations. If you're going to raise $100 million, then fine, you can work with a broker dealer. The broker has relationships and they can bring in tens of millions of dollars to your deal, and they can compensate you, right? We've talked, I think, in the past, but when JP Morgan, actually it wasn't JP, that was the old one, when Blackstone just did a $26 billion real estate fund, they of course went through a broker dealer. And if you look at their filing, you'll see the amount of money that was paid to the broker dealer is pretty crazy. $300 million, whatever the percentage is. But it caters.
Not bad for a day's job.
Yeah, broker dealers tend to want to, bring $20 million, $30 million, $50 million at a time. They don't want to be bringing in $100,000, $200,000, $50,000 at a time. And so there's this gap, and I think that's what the SEC is trying to address. And so they've come out with this proposed rules. They're going to call them finders, but they're really much more than a finder. They're really allowing people to, number one, get paid transaction-based compensation, which is the big one. So I can actually get compensated contingent upon that referral investing in your deal. So if they don't invest in your deal, you don't pay me. If they do invest in the deal, you can pay me a percentage of what they invested, or a flat fee, or however you want to do it. But I can do transaction-based, which is great. The other thing I'm going to be able to do is actually be somewhat involved in the process. I'm going to be able to talk to the people that I know, my contacts, and show them the documentation of the person raising the capital. I'm going to be able to make those introductions to those individuals. I'm going to be able to participate in those conversations. Obviously, I'm not going to be making any recommendations as to whether it's a good deal or a bad deal, but I'm going to be much more involved. I'm going to be able to literally sit down with my client or my contact and walk them through documents if I wanted to, and then make that introduction to, in this case, let's say to you. I make the introduction to Gavin, and then Gavin takes it from there, takes over, and that person makes an investment, and now Gavin and I can have an arrangement where he's going to pay me 2%, 3%, $50,000 or whatever on that thing. For now, it's going to be limited to accredited investors only, so I can only refer accredited investors, and I can't go out and advertise, right? I can't just go out and go on Facebook and try and get brand new people in so I can qualify them and then refer them to Gavin. I've got to have, I'm going to presume it's going to be a pre-existing relationship, and maybe it's the standards we have now. And of course, it's got to be written. I mean, a lot of these things make sense. You want to have a written arrangement between, it's me and Gavin. You certainly want to be disclosing that to the person investing. I mean, that's also pretty self-evident. I mean, if somebody's getting paid to make a recommendation, that's going to influence the investor's decision as to whether they go with the recommendation or not, if they know that there's some financial benefit to the person making the introduction. But anyway, that's going to be in the world that I work with our clients. There's so many instances where people are raising, relatively small amounts of money, $1 million, $2 million, maybe $5 million. And there are people that come out and say, hey, I got a group of investors that would love to invest, and maybe $1 million, I can bring in $1 million, but they want to get compensated somehow. And right now people want to do all kinds of, creative avenues to try and get it done, most of which are really not appropriate. But anyway, so that's really the one I'm the most excited about. Now, my excitement was a little bit dulled in that the commissioner of the SEC just announced yesterday, the day before, that he is going to step down at the end of the year to allow, as you know, we have a new administration coming in. So who the new SEC commissioner is going to be, and maybe this is something that they want to take it in a different direction. But the next steps for this one, this literally came out 3 weeks ago. There's a 30-day comment period, which is probably about to wind up if it hasn't already ended, where people, again, are going to send their comments about whether they think it's a good idea or a bad idea. And then based on that feedback, they're going to come out with a proposed rule, which I'm guessing will come out in the first quarter of next year. And then we'll see what and again, they'll invite comments, a comment period. And then based on that, they'll come out with a final rule, which I'm guessing will be sometime at the end of next year. But if it's anywhere near what they're proposing now, it's really a game changer for most of the equity money raisers that are out there that are looking to raise capital, or who are looking to, make introductions and get compensated for those relationships they've already built. So I thought that was. What else do we have going on? There's been a barrage. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I actually thought about it the other day, and I said, maybe it's because we're coming to the end of sort of this administration, and so now they want to just get it all out there as quickly as possible. But there were some new proposed rules that came out in March of this year, which now finally became final 2 weeks ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, early November. So about 2 weeks ago. And there was just a barrage of just little miscellaneous new rules, which basically mirrored those that came out in March. So the proposed rules essentially became final with a few tweaks. I think the most interesting one for me is, I want to see how I can explain this without losing too many people, but there's a lot of issues now with people who do multiple raises at the same time or close to each other. And there's always this fear that the SEC will combine those raises. So even though you think you're doing two different raises and you're complying with two different sets of rules, there's a concept called integration where the SEC will say, yeah, I know you have two different deals going on. Maybe one's a 506B where you're not advertising, one's a 506C where you are advertising, but we think they're similar or basically the same thing and we're going to combine them. And that's become an issue for a lot of people, especially when they're switching back and forth from an allows them to advertise like a 506C to an exemption that does not allow them to advertise like a 506B. There's always been a safe harbor that if you wait 6 months between the two offerings, then they will not be integrated. They will not combine them. So if you go and you stop, let's say you're doing a 506B offering where you're not allowed to advertise and you stop it today, then you wait 6 months and you start a new offering, which may be for the same project or very similar, because you waited 6 months and now you do a 506C, for example, and you advertise, they're not going to combine those. They've just shrank that to 30 days. So it went from 6 month window to a 1 month, essentially a 1 month window, where if those two offerings have a 1 month buffer in between them, then you're not going to integrate them. And more specifically, along the same lines, they came out with a rule that said if you, which is something we could not do before, and I think this is really the exciting part, you can start a 506, not to get too technical, but you can start a deal where you cannot advertise, which is a 506B, for example. So you can start an offering with a 506B, and then literally halfway through your offering. So now you can start with the 506B. You're not allowed to advertise. You have to have people that you know. And let's say you're trying to raise $1 million, and you get halfway up there, and you're like, oh man, I'm running a little short on my raise. I'm supposed to get to $1 million. I've only got 600,000. I'm kind of short. I'd like to go advertise now. They're going to allow you to do that now. You're going to be able to pivot and at some point say, I'm going to stop it's related to this integration issue. I'm going to stop the 506B offering today. I'm going to start tomorrow my 506C offering, which is the exact same deal, except now I'm going to go advertise and I'm only going to accept accredited investors and I'm going to go verify those investors. But for the first time, we're able to actually pivot on one of those raises. And it has to do with this integration process, where in addition to that 1 month buffer, they've said we're not going to integrate two deals where one starts with no advertising and it's followed by one that does allow advertising. We're not going to combine those, which is also another thing, because I've got plenty of clients who are kind of on the fence and they're like, I'd like to do a 506B because I want to take non-accredited investors, for example, going back to our initial conversation earlier, but I don't know if I have enough people. I don't know if my network is big enough to go raise this amount of money. So I kind of want to advertise, but if I advertise, I'm not going to be able to take my friends and family who are non-accredited. So this is kind of the debate. And now we're going to be able to do both. We're going to be able to start an offering under one exemption, and then at some point pivot, stop the one exemption, start a new exemption, and the SEC will not integrate those two as long as we follow these rules of complying with the new exemption, obviously. But so that's kind of exciting stuff. So yeah, I don't know what's going on. There just seems to be a lot of stuff going on out there.
It seems to be like it's moving in the direction of favoring the small people now. That's been doing all the legwork. So it could be the administration trying to push things out to say, hey, we're doing this to help the smaller men so we could get more votes or whatever it is. It might be. It could be a political move. It could be a strategic move. I think if anything, it's a good move for the community, especially, as a lawyer, there's lots of people doing underhand tactics right now that's trying to get away with it. But I think the finder's fee, the one that you're really excited about, which is the second one that you talked about, is quite an interesting one. And it's going to open up the board that the broker-dealer is no longer going to be able to play the big cards anymore. And for a better word, it's going to what was the word?
Deregulate or just, yeah. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we do over 100 of these a year. So we've done hundreds of these offerings, let's just say the last decade. I think only probably 3 or 4 of them have my clients ever used a broker dealer. And that's really being like incidental. It's just they happen to, maybe it's a website. There was a crowdfunding website that they happen to be a broker dealer. But it's not like they said, hey, I need to raise all this money. Let me go hire a broker dealer. Because again, the broker dealers, the joke is they don't like to get out of bed unless they're putting $25 million or $50 million to work, because it's just a lot of, it's just a lot of work. They want to get paid for it. So we don't use in our world, in my world, I should say, we don't use broker dealers because it's not there. And so that's the gap that we've created. And I think you're right. I think what's happened is that, and I think it all goes back to the Great Recession of 2008. That's what prompted the new advertising rules to come into play. So that's what caused 506C to exist, which now allows people to advertise, which in the past they were not able to. And I think that just caused more people to want to come out and raise capital, which is what they wanted to do. And now they're finding this constraint that's like, hey, that's great. I can go, I can expand on that part, but I'd really like to be able to use other people to bring in capital and help me expand even more. And this is help in that process, assuming it continues and passes anywhere near what it is now. So
when is that second law due to be passed, you said?
We don't know. It literally, if you, I don't know how you would Google it, probably, new SEC Finders Law or Finders Rule. It's literally at this point, it's like a press release. It's literally a draft, 1-page, 2-page press release that kind of goes through the steps of what they're thinking about and inviting the public to make comments. And so my best guess, and this is just totally a guess, but my best guess is you'll see a proposed rule based on all these comments sometime in the first quarter of next year. Whatever, February or March probably. And then from there, based on the one we just saw, it usually takes them a good 8 to 9 months to then go from that proposed rule to a final rule. So I'm guessing in the fourth quarter of next year is when we'll see the final rule based on the press release we just got 3 weeks ago.
Okay, well, it definitely seems to be moving in the direction that we would want it to be moving in. And I think it's only good as well, because it's going to create jobs as well for people, which is also another good thing. Or people who have connections and networks and who couldn't do anything before. So that's a really good thing. I think, it's just a matter of time, like as you said, in 2008, a lot of things had to change in the way that, the governance of this was doing. And now it's moving in the direction where after 10 years, 12 years, it's actually getting to where we, as real estate investors or fundraisers, are going to be happy with.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing. Maurucio, I don't have any questions really for you, but I mean, that was a really good introduction as to say what is the new rules that's coming out and what people need to be aware of. So I don't think I'll take much more of your time because I know you're quite busy today, but I do need to catch up with you sometime soon, and we'll speak soon. Is there any last words you have for everybody?
No,
if anybody wants to get hold of you.
Yeah, we'll just continue to update as these progress through the line and they become proposed rules or final rules. We'll come back on here and we'll update everyone. The website's probably the best way to get a hold of me, premierlawgroup.net. Just punch your numbers in there and we'll have somebody reach out and we'll be able to connect. Would be happy to do that. Drop that you saw this episode and we'll be happy to connect with you.
Yes, and for those of you all, we have this new thing that we're doing. If you're looking at us on YouTube, the details for Maurucio is going to be in the description link below. We're going to have all the information. His previous episodes as well is going to be listed there. His contact details for you to touch base with him. Mention that you saw us. You saw it on GCRE, and he'll be more than happy to speak to you and advise you. Likewise, you could look at us on Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, Apple TV, Android, Smart TV now. And we've been happy to announce that we released our Android and iOS iPhone apps now in the marketplace, which I'll send you a copy to download the link, Maurucio, and have a look at it and play around. But that's all for now today, guys. We appreciate you viewing, and we look forward to having the next show again soon. Take care.
Bye, guys.